get up and dash 100 meters and I would eat up the competition. It's just non-existent. I kick my feet up. Thought I was passing till I got blasted.
Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. So, Disco Inferno has a bit of a reputation as being a little fast and loose with his opinions. That leads to a lot of people attacking him on Twitter all the time and talking about how stupid he is and he's a stupid mid-carder, yada, yada, yada. A lot of ad hominem stuff. Not too many people actually take what Disco says seriously. I do find Disco's takes to be pretty fun, and I find him to be pretty knowledgeable on the business, even if he's not 100% right and he's a little in the weeds or a little lost in the past, as sometimes people get. I don't ever feel like he was out and out wrong or out and out rude or out and out ridiculous. But this take that he has today is pretty ridiculous. This is from the Keeping It 100 podcast, a clip that was posted on YouTube. Disco Inferno, is WWE responsible for Jon Moxley? And I was like, what does that mean? And I know sometimes they do clickbait on the Keeping It 100 official channel. So I listened to it, and Disco kind of explains what he thinks about Jon Moxley and his alcoholism, and that it might be WWE's fault. So I'm going to play some of the audio. I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's 4 minutes. But I think Disco is going to be able to make his point within the first minute or two. And we'll see what we can get out on the other side. So let's get started.
So I want to talk about, did you notice we never really talked about the Jon Moxley thing? Like he's going into inpatient alcohol rehab.
Right.
Bro, do you know years ago that the WWE, banned bands like Somas and stuff? Did you know this?
Yeah, it was like 2009, 2010, after a few incidents or whatever.
Yeah,
after the ban what thing, right?
They banned a lot of prescription medication.
Yeah, not right after.
Because they didn't want guys getting hooked on it. But, bro, it turned everybody into a bunch of drunks.
All right. Now, I've heard this before. I heard this also with the banning of marijuana, that a lot of that turned people to alcohol. And that people are trying to use these things as painkillers to self-medicate. This is the point Disco is making. To be quite honest, there are the somas. What he's talking about those things are dangerous. They were killing dudes in the 90s. There was the guy who invented the Death Valley Driver. I'm trying to remember what his name is. It'll come to me in a second. He was an ECW wrestler. He was Rad Radford in the WWF. And he went to ECW. They cut him. They fired him because he had a soma problem. He went to ECW, where he became a regular down there. And he overdosed on somas. Somas became a really big problem in wrestling in the 90s. And they tried to get rid of them. And the Vikes, which they're going to miss in a minute, Vicodins, Percocets, all this kind of stuff, they've been trying to get rid of the painkillers for a long time. Can't get rid of it completely, though, because these guys do need something in order to deal with pain. But to say that, WWE banned the use of painkillers, not completely. You got to have a subscription, I believe. But that still doesn't change the fact that I don't see how Vince McMahon is responsible for Jon Moxley specifically being an alcoholic. Let's see if he's going to continue down this point.
Right.
You see these guys, how much they drink. When I went and saw I went years ago. I went the night Christian got concussed from Randy Orton here in Vegas, and he was done. It was that was the end of his career. Was that concussion? And I met them at the Hard Rock, which is now the Virgin Hotel. And I met them at the bar, and everybody in there, these guys drink straight vodka.
Yeah, because no calories.
And they drink a lot. You know what I'm saying? It's this is professional wrestlers. If you can't take medication to make yourself feel better, that's literally the only go-to thing you can go to.
Right.
Is booze and weed. Yeah, but this is back before you could even smoke weed. Before it was getting legal anywhere and stuff, everything. So it's man, I just feel, I feel like he's a product of the system.
All right, so that's the problem that I got right there. He wasn't wrong until he said he feels Jon Moxley is a product of the system. Of course, Disco didn't know this. He can't possibly know this, but Jon Moxley had a problem with drugs and alcohol before he went to WWE. In his book, he discusses when he was trying to get signed, he had a problem. He was worried about the drug and alcohol program in Pittsburgh, and he had to go to the doctors. And I'm going to read a little bit of a passage from that. So this is what Moxley says after he got the call to go to FCW. I was nervous to go to Pittsburgh for the standard medical evaluation. I've been taking bigger and higher risks with my body, sliding further down the slippery slope of death matches. I was afraid I'd get to Pittsburgh and find out I had injuries I didn't know about that would disqualify me. I had thought of HWA alum Nigel McGuinness, who signed with WWE only to have his contract rescinded after his trip to Pittsburgh. And what about this drug test? I drank gallons and gallons of water to flush out any traces of any substance that could be lingering in my system. The results came in the mail, and I stared at the envelope for a good while. I said a final prayer, hallelujah, clean bill of health. So throughout this book, he's talking about, snorting Klonopins and, constantly with the cocktails and the vodka. Jon Moxley is not a product of the WWE system. Jon Moxley is a product of death matches. Being a young guy who was, brought into that world. And those guys use all kinds of stuff. And look, wrestlers in general, Kurt Angle never did death matches, but Kurt Angle, had that neck surgery, and that stuff keeps flaring up. And guys do it all the time. They get caught on these drugs and they do alcohol because they're in pain all the time. So it's not the system, And this is probably the weirdest take I've ever heard Disco have. The Jon Moxley, I don't think would blame anybody else. Now, I could go on a spiel about personal responsibility, and it's your responsibility to not get hooked on drugs and alcohol. But at the same time, you're talking about cultures, and Moxley fit into the culture of the deathmatch wrestler. They typically do drugs. They typically drink a lot. They drink a lot before the show. They drink a lot afterwards because they were supposed to be like a party and almost family type atmosphere. And then with that comes the drugs. And you do that stuff. And yes, it's your responsibility because it's your body that you're doing it to. So I could go on a spiel about personal responsibility, but I think it's best to say it's not just personal responsibility. It's also the industry itself. These guys fall down for a living. Yeah, it's not going to be easy, for Jon Moxley to deal with pain. And I'm not surprised that since he went back to doing death matches, he ended up in rehab. I'm not surprised at all. If he'd have stayed in WWE, he might have went to the nut house for a different reason. But now he's going to the drunk tank because he started doing death matches all over again, which means he wants to do fire, he wants to do thumbtacks, he wants to do barbed wire, he wants to do all the stuff that everybody knows him for. And he's now older than he used to be. He can't bounce back from that stuff like he used to. He's 35, 36 years old now. I know them knees got to be talking to him. The back got to be talking to him like, look, 15 years of this. He started this when he was 17. Almost 20 years of this stuff. And his personal philosophy, like I said, I went through the book. His personal philosophy is to go balls to the wall, all out. Take wild bumps, do wild spots. Of course, he's going to need some type of bring me down, some type of painkiller. Of course he is. That's not WWE's fault, though. It's not. And I understand why he would think that, because you do push people in one direction when you ban a substance. When they ban steroids, they just push guys towards HGH, which is human growth hormone, which caused a lot of the problems that people have with like a cardiomegaly, which is enlarged hearts. When you start taking human growth hormone, what it does, it makes parts of your body bigger. Not your penis though, but your hands, your head. Look at The Rock's head. The Rock's head is doubled in size. Barry Bonds, his head got very big too. Triple H's hands got really big. Your arteries, not arteries, but your different parts of your body, like your heart, cardiomegaly is enlarged heart. Cardio means heart. Megaly means big. So you will have like an enlarged heart, which of course creates heart attacks. So you'll find that often guys who have been taking HGH, they have very weird appendages. I always talk about Triple H's hands. Look at Hunter Hearst Helmsley's hands, and then look at Triple H's hands. I'm telling you, that's HGH. Okay, Scott Steiner, his awkward looking muscles, that's human growth hormone. Guys started taking human growth hormone a lot when the steroids, because human growth hormone technically is not a steroid. At least it wasn't considered a steroid. It was a way around it. Now they've said no steroids whatsoever, anabolic or otherwise. And human growth hormone does create muscle. It also creates a bunch of other things. But that's one of the things that they do. So you say no painkillers, that pushes guys towards weed. Then you say, well, first it was no weed that pushed guys towards painkillers. Now it's reversing, where guys are saying, okay, because Randy got popped for weed a bunch of times, and some guys got popped for painkillers a bunch of times. But I would rather guys smoke weed than do painkillers. That's just me. I'm not a big fan of weed, but I would rather people take weed, do weed, than do painkillers. But what I think is the big problem here is people are trying to find the happy medium, because stimulants have been known to cause problems. Stimulants being cocaine. That was a huge problem, especially in the 80s and 90s. Led a lot of guys to doing a lot of stuff they probably wouldn't normally do. I'm of the opinion, just my opinion, that Jimmy Snuka was probably high on coke when he beat that woman to death. There's plenty of stories of Jimmy Snuka just walking around with bags of cocaine in his pocket, and him trying to give cocaine to people as gifts. And he probably got high. He's on that stimulant. He spazzed out and beat her up and killed her. Didn't even realize it. Didn't even know it. Didn't even think that much about it. But that kind of stuff, you got to cut that out. Those guys were racing up their heart rate. Eventually, that shit killed them. But then you start taking the downers, and you got guys like the Somas, and these guys are basically falling asleep all over the place. They're falling asleep at the wheel. Alcohol is another one. That's where you get, I think Eddie Guerrero fell asleep at the wheel in his car. WCW, almost died. So you have the uppers and the downers. The uppers will give you a heart attack. The downers will put you to sleep and you'll never fucking wake up. So you don't want either one of these things. So you're trying to find a happy medium, or what is a safe drug to deal with pain. And boxers have had the problem for a long time too. MMA fighters have the same problem, but also police officers, people who deal with a lot of trauma, and it's not just physical trauma, also emotional trauma. Nurses seem to drink a lot. Police officers seem to drink a lot, because police officers see terrible stuff all the time, and even if they don't get physically hurt, they see horrible shit. Imagine you have to go to work and you hear stories of somebody being molested, or you see somebody's dead body strewn all over the street, and you have to do something about it. You can't just turn around and walk away. That kind of stuff leads people to drinking and doing drugs. And it also leads to a lot of domestic violence, which should be no surprise, as we also get with football players. So there needs to be a happy medium there. But I don't believe that we should be banning WWE, blaming WWE for this. It's just the business that they are in. They're in the business of falling down for a living. There's going to be a lot of pain that's going to be associated with that, and people are going to want to do something about that pain. What they should be doing, I don't know. But I think if weed is in a CBD or whatever that case may be is going to help them, I say go for it. Because I think there's less side effects for that. You might hallucinate, And I'm not the biggest supporter of marijuana, because I work in mental health. And I can tell you, when you start hallucinating, sometimes you don't stop. And they don't want to tell people that. But sometimes when you start taking things that make you hallucinate, it triggers other things, and you never stop hallucinating. There have been people who have ended up that's like in the drunk tanks, and the people end up in the drunk tank because they were just partying, and they blacked out. They don't know where they were. They don't know, and now their body started to crave it. When you start smoking weed or doing whatever, it could trigger schizophrenia or schizophrenic disorders. This stuff is not well talked about because, for years and years, people have been trying to get weed legalized. And I'm okay with it because, as a libertarian, I don't care what you put in your body. But there are side effects to that stuff. You start hearing stuff, you start seeing stuff, and it never goes away. But I think this was probably a terrible take from Disco Inferno. And I'm surprised he said that. So let me know what you guys think. WWE did the right thing in banning painkillers, and they've tried to make the business safer in the process. So they kind of banned a lot of the things that could cause major injuries. This was the point of them banning power drivers and stuff like that, so that guys wouldn't hit their head. But even if it's just power bombs, it's repeated back bumps. Eventually your back hurts, your knees hurt. These things are inevitable with the business. You can't make the business completely safe. You can't completely get away from the pain and the suffering. But I think this is a really bad take from Disco. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel, donate to the channel. Thank you guys for your time, and I will talk to you guys later. Peace.